Hello everyone, I hope you're doing good and staying safe. Welcome to SimpliCode's YouTube channel, and in today's session, we'll be taking you through day 2 on this SQL training program series. I hope my audio is fine and the screen is clearly visible. If you guys are facing any issue, let us know in the comment section below and we will try to resolve it as soon as possible. Alright, in our previous videos on the part 1 of this SQL training program series, we have covered some basics and fundamentals of SQL concepts and topics. I hope you guys have understood it, and if you haven't checked out that first part, I would highly recommend to check that out on our channel. We will leave the link in the description below. And in today's session, we'll be taking you through some more new topics wherein we'll cover some more fundamentals of SQL and some intermediate topics which are highly recommended to understand SQL and to perform data analysis using SQL. So without any further delay, let's get started. But before we begin, if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, consider getting subscribed to our channel SimpliCode to stay updated with all the latest technologies, and hit that bell icon to never miss an update from us. Alright, firstly let us discuss the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial with a quick understanding of various DML statements like insert into, update, and delete. Once we are done with this, we will be understanding what are joins in SQL, understand its significance and why they are used. After that, we'll be thoroughly understand in a deeper sense of what are different types of joins such as SQL inner join, SQL outer join, SQL left join, and SQL right join. Up next, we'll discuss what are keys in SQL, why they are used, and how they are implemented on SQL tables. Once we are done with it, we will be going through aggregate functions in SQL. Once we are done with that, we'll be understanding what is group by and order by and understand the differences between these two most used clauses in SQL. After that, we'll be understanding what is between operator. And then we'll be covering what is SQL where and having clause. And next, we will be understanding subqueries in SQL. And finally, we'll wrap up the session by understanding what is Web SQL and why it is used. And with this, we'll be covering all the agenda for this session. I hope I've made myself clear for this. If you guys are having any issue or are not understanding any topics while we are in the session, feel free to let us know in the comments and we'll be clearing all your doubts. So without any further ado, let us dive straight into today's session. Over to our training expert. SQL insert by SimpliCode. Firstly, let us understand the agenda for today's session. Firstly, we'll start the tutorial by understanding what is SQL insert, and then we'll understand the syntax of SQL insert statement, and finally we'll go through some of the SQL insert statements and execute them in MySQL Workbench. So, what is SQL insert statement? SQL insert statement is widely used command in SQL, which is a part of data manipulation language DML used by various relational databases. The insert command is used for inserting one or more rows into a database table with specified table column values. Let us now understand the syntax for insert statement. Now we have two types of syntaxes. The first method is insert into table name values, and within the brackets you have to mention the values. In this first method, there is no need to specify the column names where the data will be inserted. You need to only insert their values. The second method specifies both the column name and the values which you want to insert. And the syntax is insert into, which is the keyword we are using. After that, we have to mention the table name, and within the brackets, we have to mention the columns and then values 1, values 2, values 3, and so on up to our requirement. So this was the syntax. Let us take an example. Now let's say I've created a table students and I want to insert values into it. So the syntax for inserting the values is insert into table name. I'm taking here it as students, and I'm mentioning the columns roll number, name, age, city, and I'm inserting the values as roll number as 1, name as Rohan, age as 22, and city as Hyderabad. So in this way you can insert values up to n number of rows into your table. So now that we've understood and got an idea of what SQL insert statement is, let us jump into MySQL Workbench and do the execution part.
Choose from over 300 in-demand skills and get access to 1,000 plus hours of video content for free. Visit SkillUp by SimpliLearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
As you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and in order to insert the values into the table, we have to first create a table. So let us first create a table, and the syntax is followed as create table, which is the keyword that we use. And I'm creating a new table that is customer, and which has column names as customer ID, customer name, their age, address, the product they have purchased, and the purchase date of the product. And I'm taking primary key here as customer ID because it uniquely identifies each and every record. So let me just use the select statement to display whether the table is created or not. Select star from the table, that is customer. So as you can see, our table is successfully created with the column names that we have specified. Now that we have created a table, let us see how to insert the values into it. For that, first let us discuss the insert into value statement. The insert into value statement is used to insert either all the column values or a specified number of column values in the table. Inserting only specified column data in the row requires the column name should be specified in the insert statement. So let's say if I want to insert all the columns into the customer table, the following query would be insert into table name, which is the customer. Now within the brackets, we have to mention the column names. So the columns that we have taken are customer ID, customer name, their age, address, product that they've purchased, and the purchase date. Close the brackets. Now mention the values keyword, and again within the brackets specify the values for each of the columns. So I'm taking customer ID as let's say 1011, comma, customer name, let's say Rahul. Now make sure you mention the character values inside the single quotes, and for integer values you need not mention the single quotes. Next, their age, let's say 25, comma, address, let's say the city they belong to is the address, so I'm taking as Hyderabad, comma. Next, the product that they have purchased, let's say they have let's say Rahul has purchased the phone as the product. And finally, purchase date, let's say 2022 March, and let's take date as 25. So close the brackets and put the semicolon. So let us execute this statement and see. So as you can see, our query has been successfully executed. Now to display the values, I'll use the set command again. So let us execute the statement. So as you can see, the values have been successfully inserted into our table with respect to their columns as customer ID, customer name, age, address, product, and the purchase date. So here we've inserted a row with all the column values using the insert statement. Similarly, you can insert a row with only specified column values as well. Let's say if you want to insert data for only the columns customer ID, customer name, and the product they've purchased, and leaving the rest of the columns as such, the following query would be insert into table name, mention the table name, that is customer, and within the brackets mention the columns that you want to enter the values. So I'm only entering the values for customer ID, customer name, and the product that they've purchased, and mention the keyword values, open the brackets, and specify the values as accordingly. So I'm taking customer ID as 1012, customer name, let's say Kavya, and the product that they've purchased is, let's say, as AC. close the brackets, mention the semicolon, and let us execute the statement. So as you can see, our query is successfully executed. So let me display the values, and I'll use the select statement to display the values. So as you can see, only the customer ID, customer name, and the product that they've purchased is being displayed here, and leaving the rest of the columns, that is age, address, and the purchase date, as null values. So in this way, you can also insert values into only the specified columns of the table. Next, let us discuss about insert multiple rows statement. We can insert multiple rows in a single insert statement at a time. We can insert multiple row values by grouping row values with open and close brackets and separating each row with a comma. Now, if you want to insert, let's say, hundreds of records and insert values into it, it will take a lot of time, and at the same time, it will become hectic if you specify the column names each and every time. So in order to reduce that and insert the values quickly, we use this multiple statement. So let's say if I want to insert new values, insert two rows of employee ID 1013 and 1014. So the following query would be insert into customer, that is the table name, and within the brackets, so before entering the values, you have to mention the keyword values, and you can directly enter the values now without mentioning the column names. So as you can see, I've inserted two rows and the data into the table. So let me just execute the statement, and let us see the output. So our query has been successfully executed. Let me use the select statement to display the new values. So as you can see, the customer ID 1013 and 1014 details has been displayed. So in this way, you can use the insert multiple statement to insert multiple rows into the table. So just keep a note that make sure you insert the values accordingly in the order of the columns that you have taken in the table. SQL update by SimpliCode. Firstly, let us discuss the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial by understanding what is SQL update, and then let us understand the syntax of SQL update statement, and finally we'll look at some of the SQL update statements and execute them in MySQL Workbench. So what is MySQL update statement? SQL update statement is used to update the column values in the existing table. That means it is used to change the values present in one or more rows in an existing table. Now, where clause is used in the update statement to update the matched rows that satisfies this condition that we have specified in the where clause. Let us understand the syntax of SQL update statement. The syntax is followed as update, which is the keyword. Followed by that, we have to mention the table name, and then set column name is equals to new value. That is the value that you want to change from the previous value. And after that, you have to mention the condition. That is where specify the condition. To understand this in a better way, let us take an example. Consider a table student which is having columns roll number, name, age, and city. Now, if I want to update the value of city of the student who's having roll number as 3 from Mumbai to Chennai, so the following query would be update student, which is the table name, set city is equals to Chennai, where roll number is equals to 3. Now, if we execute this statement, this will be the output, where the city which is previously Mumbai has been changed into Chennai. So in this way, you can use the update statement. Now that we have got an idea on what SQL update statement is and how it works, let us jump into MySQL Workbench for the execution part. As you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and on the left side we can view the tables that are present in our database SimpliCode. So I'm going to work on the employee table. So let me just display the records that are present in the table. For that, I'll use the select command, select star from the table, that is employee. So let us execute this statement. So it will display the values of all the details of the employees, having their employee ID, employee name, age, their designation, date of birth, city, and salary. Now let us look at the update statement first. Now, if I want to update the salary of the employee who's having employee ID as let's say 106 to 35,000. Now initially the employee ID 106, the employee is having the salary 25,000. Now if I want to change into 30,000, the following query would be update table name, that is employee. Use the keyword set, mention the column name that you want to change. Now we are changing the salary, set salary equals to, from 25,000 to I am changing into 35,000, where employee ID equals to 106. So let us execute this statement and see the output. So as you can see, our statement is successfully executed. Now let us use the select command to display the records. So as you can see, the employee ID 106 is having the salary as 135,000. It is being now changed into 35,000 from 25,000. So in this way you can use the update statement. Similarly, you can update multiple column values as well. Let's say if I want to update the designation and the salary of the employee based on their employee ID, for that the following query would be update table name employee, set designation. Now if I want to change the designation of the employee Lohit, who's having the employee ID 103, from HR to senior HR, so I'll mention senior HR as our new value, and also I want to change the salary, so put a comma, salary equals to let's say I want to change the salary from 45,000 to 60,000, where mention the condition employee ID equals to 103. So let us execute this statement and see the output. So our query has been successfully executed. So as you can see, the employee name Lohit, who's having employee ID 103, his designation has been changed to senior HR and his salary has also been changed into 60,000. So in this way you can use update statement to change multiple values that are present in the columns as well. Next, let us discuss about update date statement. In SQL, update date statement is used to update the date and time values in the existing table. All the date and time values should be specified in the single quotes, and you can also mention the condition using the where clause. Let us take an example. Let's say if I want to update the date of birth of the employees who is having employee ID 104, so the following query would be update table name employee, set date of birth. Now I'm changing the date of birth of the employee ID who's 103, so I'm changing the date of birth as 1996 Jan 1st. Mention the condition where employee ID equals to 103. So let us execute the statement and see the output. So our query has been successfully executed. Now in the resultant table, you can see the date of birth of the employee who's having employee ID as 103 has been changed to 1996 January 1st. In this way you can use the update date statement to change the date values. Let us take another example. Now you can also update multiple rows present in the table. Let's say if you want to update the date of joining of all those employees who's having the designation business analyst, for that the following query would be update table name, that is employee, set date of joining equals to I'm taking the date of joining as 1st January 2022. 1st January 2022. Now specify the condition where designation equals to business analyst. Put a semicolon and execute this statement now. So let us see the output, whether the values are changed or not. As you can see, the date of joining for all the business analysts that are present in the table, for example, for the employee ID 101 as well as 109 and 111, their date of joining has been changed to January 1st, 2022. In this way, you can use the update date statement to change the values of date and time that are present in the table. SQL delete statement by SimpliCode. Firstly, let us discuss the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial by understanding what SQL delete statement is, and then we'll understand the syntax of SQL delete statement, and finally we'll look at some SQL delete statements and execute them in MySQL Workbench. So, what is SQL delete statement? SQL delete statement is one of the data manipulation command DML that is used to remove rows from a table. That means you will able to delete the existing records from the table. Now you can either delete a single row, multiple rows or values from the existing table depending on the condition that is specified. That means delete statement with where condition is used to delete the rows that satisfies the condition with where clause and the remaining rows are not changed. Also, delete statement without where condition is used to delete all the rows from the table. Let us now understand the syntax of SQL delete statement. The syntax is followed as delete from table name where condition. Here, where condition is optional. That means you can either use it or you cannot use it. So let us take an example. Let's say if I want to delete the details of the employee from the employee table whose employee ID is 101. So for that, the following syntax would be delete from employee where employee ID equals to 101. Now if you execute this query, it will delete the details of that employee who's having employee ID as 101. In this way, you can use delete statement to delete one or more rows from the existing table. Now that we've got an idea on what SQL delete is, let us jump directly into the MySQL Workbench and get into the execution part. As you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and on the left side you can view the various tables that are present in our database SimpliCode. So let us consider employee table first as an example table to frame SQL queries to perform various operations using the delete statement. Firstly, so let me display the values that are present in the employee table. For that, I'm using the select statement, select star from the table that is employee. So let me just execute this statement. So it will display the records of all the employees, their employee ID, employee name, age, destination, date of birth, city, and salary. So firstly, let us see how to delete a single row from the given existing table. For that, let me take an example. Let's say if I want to delete one of the employee details from the employee table whose employee ID is, let's say, 108. For that, the following query would be delete from table name, that is employee, where specify the condition employee ID equals to 107. So let us execute this statement and see the output. So our query has been successfully executed. Let me use the select statement to display the records and see whether or not our record is deleted or not. So as you can clearly see, 107 record of the employee is missing from the table. That means we have successfully deleted the record of that employee who is having employee ID 107. Let us now understand how to delete multiple rows from the existing table. Before that, let me display the total number of records present in the table so that we will have a clear idea on how many records have been deleted after executing the query. For that, I'm using a count statement, select count, use the star operator from the table that is employee. So we have total 14 records in the table. So let us now execute this statement. For that, we will take an example. Let's say if I want to delete multiple employee details from the employee table whose designation is, let's say, business analyst. So for that, the following query would be delete from table that is employee where designation equals to business analyst. So let us execute the statement and see the output. So as you can see, our query has been successfully executed. Let us again use the count statement to see the values that are deleted. So as you can see, the total count of the employees in the table has been changed to 11. That means there are a total of 3 employees whose designation is business analyst. And since we have specified the condition where we want to delete only those records from the table whose designation is business analyst. So in this way, you can delete multiple rows by using the where condition statement. Now, similarly, you can delete multiple records from the table using multiple conditions as well. This can be done using various operators like and, or, between, etc. So let us take an example for that. Suppose, let's say if I want to delete the employee details from the employee table whose designation is, let's say, data analyst, and their salary is less than 30,000 by using or operator. For that, the following query would be delete from table, that is employee, specify the condition where designation equals to data analyst or their salary is less than 30,000. So let us execute this statement now. So our query has been successfully executed, and let us see the output. For that, I am using the select count statement as well again. So as you can see, only one record has been deleted from the table. That means there is only a record of the employee whose designation is either data analyst or their salary is less than 30,000. So in this way, you can use multiple conditions to delete the records from table as well. Let us now take another scenario. Let's say if I want to delete multiple employee details from the employee table whose salary is in between, let's say 30,000 and 45,000. For that, I'll use the between operator, and the following query would be delete from the table employee where salary between is the operator that we have to use, 30,000 and 45,000. So let us execute this statement and see the output. So our query has been successfully executed. Let me use the count statement to display the number of records now. So as you can see, previously we had 10 records in the table. Now it has been changed to 4. That means a total of 6 records has been deleted from the table, wherein the salary of the employees ranging between 30,000 and 45,000. So in this way, you can use the delete statement to delete multiple records from the table by specifying the multiple conditions. Now we have seen how to delete a single record or multiple records, or even multiple records using multiple conditions in the existing table. Sometimes there might be a requirement to delete the entire table data to free up the memory or to allocate new data into the table. For that, we use the delete statement to delete the whole record from the table as well. For that, executing delete statement without the where clause deletes the entire table data. So make sure you're careful while using the delete statement, because you'll end up deleting the whole table if you're using without where clause. Let's say if I want to delete the remaining records of the table from the employee table, I'll simply write the query as delete from table, that is employee. So let me execute this statement and see the output. Our query has been successfully executed. So let me just display the records in the table. For that, I'll use the select statement. So as you can see, only the columns are being present, but the records that were present in these columns have been completely deleted using the delete statement. So in this way, you can delete all the records from the table without specifying the condition using the where clause. SQL joins by SimpliCode. Firstly, let us discuss the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial by understanding what is SQL join, and then we'll discuss why we use SQL join. and then we'll go through different types of SQL joins such as SQL inner join, SQL outer join, SQL left join, and finally SQL right join. So without any further delay, let us dive straight into today's topic. So what is SQL join? In relational databases, the information you want to retrieve is often stored in various different tables. In such scenarios, you'll need to join these tables to view data in a much better way. This is where SQL join comes into picture. SQL joins is widely used clause in SQL essentially to combine and retrieve data from two or more tables based on related columns, or you can say common fields between them. Now consider two tables here. Table 1 has 3 columns A, B, C and 3 records. Let's say for reference we'll take them as 1, 2, 3. Similarly, table 2 also has 3 columns B, C, D and 3 records 3, 4, 5. Here I've taken a different color combination to represent values that are present in various columns. Now instead of querying each table every time to retrieve data, I'll simply join these two tables and this will be the following resultant table. Also, make sure when you're joining two tables, it should compulsorily have a common column. Here, C is the common field which forms the basis to join these two tables here. Why we use SQL join? Flexibility. SQL join allows the user to access and manage records from more than one table easily. Let us understand with an example. Consider Mercedes-Benz, which is one of the leading car manufacturers in the world. And let's say they want to access the records of their customers from the database. Now in the database, let us take they have various different kinds of tables such as customer table, order table, vehicle table. Now if they want to get the vehicle details of so and so customer XYZ, for that they have to first query the customer table to get the customer ID. Now once they get the customer ID, they have to query the order table to get the order ID. And finally, with the help of order ID, they can get the vehicle details. Now, as you can see, this is a time-taking process and hectic at the same time. Now, instead of that, I'll just simply join these tables, which will allow the users to combine rows from two or more tables based on different types of conditions. In this way, you can access and manage your records easily. Data redundancy. SQL join allows the user to maintain data redundancy as much as low as possible so that we can maintain the amount of data anomalies, that is the duplicate values that are repeated in various tables in the database. Finally, efficiency. SQL join executes the query faster and shows the result much more quickly because instead of using various subqueries for each and every table individually, we can just simply join two tables using a simple single query. Types of SQL joins. SQL joins are broadly classified into 4 types. They are inner join, outer join, left join, right join, and additionally we also have cross join, which is not that significant in its usage because most of the times we use the first 4 joins. Now that we have gone through different types of SQL joins, let us discuss each of them in detail. Firstly, let us discuss about SQL inner join. SQL inner join joins two tables based on a common column and selects records that have matching values in these columns. Now when the condition is applied for these columns, the query checks all the rows of table 1 and table 2. Only the rows that satisfy the join predicate are included in the resultant table. Let us now understand the syntax of the SQL inner join. The syntax is followed as select table1.column1, table1.column2, table2.column1 and so on from table 1 inner join table 2 on table1.column equals to table2.column. Now inner join syntax basically compares rows of table 1 with table 2 to check if anything matches based on the condition provided in the on clause. And when the condition is met, it returns matched rows in both tables with the selected columns in the select clause. Let us now discuss about the SQL outer join. SQL outer join, or else it is called as SQL full join or full outer join, is used to get all the rows which are present in both the tables. That means it will return all the records which are present in either left table, that is the table 1, or the right table, that is table 2, even if there are no matching records present in both the tables. Let us now understand the syntax. The syntax remains same, that is select table1.column1, table1.column2 and so on up to table2.column2. From table1, full outer join is the keyword that we use here. Table2 on table1.column equals to table2.column. Now here you have to mention the same or the similar column name in the after the on predicate statement. Next we have SQL left join. Left outer join, also known as left join, results in a table containing all the rows from the table on the left side of the join, that is the first table, and only the rows that satisfy the join condition from the table on the right side of the join, that is the second table. Any missing values for the rows from the right table in the result of the join tables are represented by null values. Let us look at the syntax. The syntax is followed as select column list, that is the column that you want to display in your table. Now make sure you maintain the syntax of the column list, that is the table name dot column name, otherwise it will throw an error. So let me just repeat the syntax. The syntax is select column list from table 1. The keyword that we use here is left join, table2 on table1 dot column equals to table2 dot column. So in this way you can use the left join to display the records. Next, finally we have the SQL right join. Now right join or right outer join is opposite to that of the left outer join. Now it follows the same rules as the left join, and the only difference is that all the rows from the right table and only the conditions satisfying the rows from the left table are present in the resultant table. That means it will return all the rows from the right table and all the matching records that are present in the left table. The syntax remains the same, that is select column list that you want to display in your table. From table 1, right join is the keyword we use, table2 on table1 dot column equals to table2 dot column. Now to sum up all these different SQL joins and how they work, I've taken a graphical representation of two different tables here which will help us visualize the real-time working of SQL joins. Now consider table 1 here, which is columns A and B and records two different records, let's say record 0, record 1, and similarly we have table 2 which have columns A and C and two records, that is record 0 and record 2. Now if you apply left join, and by the definition of left join, it will only return those values which are present in the left table and the matching records that are present in the right table. Now here the matching value that are present in both the tables is 0 and the values that are present in the left table is 1. And if you consider the right join, it will match the records from both the tables and it will display only the values from the right table. That is the reason it is being displayed the record 0 and the record 2. And if you look at the inner join, it will match the values from both the tables. Now the common value that is present in both the tables is record 0. And if you finally look at the outer join, it will return all the values from both the tables irrespective if they are matching or not. That is the reason all the records, that is record 0, record 1 and record 2 are being displayed. SQL inner join by SimpliCode. So what is SQL inner join? Using the inner join, the tables are combined on the basis of a condition also known as the join predicate. This condition is applied on the columns of both the tables on either side of the join clause. The query checks all the rows of table 1 and table 2. Now it will display only those values that satisfy the join predicate in the resultant table. That means it finds the matching values or the matching records that are found in both the tables. For example, I have a table A which has records 1, 2, 3, 4 and in table B I have records 3, 4, 5, 6. Now if you join these two tables, now the resultant output will be 3 and 4 because these are only two records that are present in both the tables. That is, the table is matching the common values that are present in both the tables. Let us now understand the syntax of SQL inner join. The syntax is followed as select table1.column1, table1.column2, table2.column2 and so on. From table 1, inner join is the keyword we have to use. Table 2 on table1.column equals to table2.column. Here after the join expression, we are mentioning the columns from which we want to match both the tables. Now that we have understood what is SQL inner join, let us jump into MySQL workbench and execute it with the help of an example. As you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and on the left side you can see the database, that is SimpliCode, and the various tables that are present in our database SimpliCode. Like we have customer table, department table, employee table, orders table, etc. Now to perform the SQL inner join operations, we'll use the employee table, department table, and the projects table. Now let us display the values that are present in the table. For that we have to use the select statement, or you can directly click on this table icon here. So first let us display the values present in the employee table. The employee table has the following fields such as employee ID, employee name, age, designation, the city they belong to, salary, date of joining, and their department ID. Next, let us display the values that are present in the department table. The department table has two fields, that is department ID and department name. And finally, let us display the values present in the projects table. The projects table has the project ID, employee ID, the project name, and the project manager. Now let's say we have a query here which says to retrieve the employee details and the department they are working in. Now before we write a query, we have to check for all those tables in which these informations are present in. For example, I can get the employee details from the employee table such as their employee ID, employee name, their designation, salary, and so on. And also I can get the department details from the department table. Now the expected query or the resultant table is based on these two tables. Now in order to retrieve the records from these two different tables, I need to connect them. In other words, we have to join these two tables. This is where the inner join comes into picture. With the help of inner join, we can connect these two tables, and we can retrieve all those matching records from those tables. Now the following query would be for the inner join is select, mention the column names that you want to display. Now I'll display the employee ID. So employee dot employee ID. I'll also display the employee name. So employee dot employee name. I'll also display the employee designation. So I'm taking employee dot designation. Now I'll also retrieve the information from the department. So I'll have to mention the department table here as well. So department dot department ID. Right. Now the query is continued as from the table 1, that is employee. I'll just write in the next sentence, from employee. Inner join is the keyword we have to use here, and mention the second table, that is department, on which is the keyword, and mention the condition on the basis of which you are connecting these two tables. Now I'm connecting the employee and the department table with the help of the department ID. So I'll mention employee dot department ID equals to department dot department ID. So let us now execute this statement and see the output. So as you can clearly see, it is displaying the values of employee ID, employee name, their designation, and their department ID as well. Now as you clearly you can see that the join condition is specified in the inner join clause after the on keyword as the expression. Now for each row in the employee table, the query finds a corresponding row in the department table that has the same matching values based on which we have mentioned here, that is the department ID. Now if there is a match between two rows in both the tables, it returns all those rows that contains columns that we have specified. For example, we have specified employee ID, name, designation, and the department that they belong to. So in this way you can use the inner join to get the records from both the tables. Also you can get the department name as well by mentioning the department names in the query, the department name dot department name. Now this will display the records of the department name that are present in the department table as well. So as you can see, there are total of 6 records and the employee details and the department names that they are working in.
And also if you notice, there are only 6 records that are present in our resultant table when we have a total of 20 records that are present in the employee table. That's because the inner join only matches those records from those columns that are having matching values from both the tables, and also the condition that we have specified in our inner join statement. Similarly, let us look at another query which says to retrieve the employee details, project they are working on, and the project manager assisting them. Now for this, to get the employee details, I'll again use the employee table, and to get the details of the project name and the project manager's name, I'll use the project table. So the following query would be select e.employee ID. Now here I've taken the alias name for the tables, that is you can mention a temporary name for the tables that you have chosen. So for employee table I'm taking as E, and for projects I'm taking as P. In order to save time we'll write in this way. So the query is followed as select e.employee ID, e.employee name, p.project name, p.project manager from the first table, that is employee. E, inner join projects, we have taken the name as P on e.employee ID is equals to p.employee ID, which is the common column from which we get the matching values from both the tables. Let us now execute this statement and see the output. So as you can see, we are able to retrieve the employee ID, employee name, project name that the employee is working on, and the project manager that have been assigned to these employees. And if you notice carefully here, like some of the employees who are having employee ID like 1012, 1013, 1018, 16, they have no project names assigned to their names. This is because even though we have all the details of employees in the employee table, we do not have the data that is being stored in the projects table. That is the reason only a limited number of records are being shown. And as per the definition of inner join, it will fetch only those records which have matching values from both the tables. So in this way, you can join 2 or more tables using the inner join statement.
SQL outer join. Now before getting into the execution part, let us just quickly discuss what is SQL outer join. The outer join statement returns all those records which are present in either the left table or the right table. Now for example, if you consider the table here A, which has records 1, 2, 3, 4, and the table B, which has records 3, 4, 5, 6. Now if you apply the full outer join to these two tables, it will display all the records, that is 1, 2, 3 and up to 6. Now let us discuss the syntax of SQL outer join. The syntax is followed as select table1.column1, table1.column2, table2.column1, and so on. These are basically the columns that you want to display in your resultant table. From table1, full outer join table2 on table1.column equals to table2.column. Now as far as MySQL is concerned, this syntax is not applicable. Now if you're working on other databases like PostgreSQL and Microsoft SQL Server, you can apply this syntax. But if you're working on MySQL Workbench, there is a different syntax which I'll be discussing in a while. So now that we've understood what is SQL outer join, let us jump into MySQL Workbench for the execution part. As you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and on the home page on the left side you can view the databases and tables. Now I've created certain tables time being. So let me just display the values that are present in these tables. Now in order to execute the SQL outer join, we'll consider the employee table as well as the project tables. So let me just display the values present in the employee table. I'll use the select operator to display those values. Select star from employee. So it will display the records of all those employees having employee ID, employee name, age, their designation, city, salary, date of joining, and their department ID. Now similarly, I'll display the records of projects. Let me just take another tab. I'll use again the select statement to display the records. Start from projects. Now if you execute this statement, it will display the project ID, employee ID, project name, and the project manager details. Now let's say if I want to fetch the details of
all the employees from the employee table and the project details they are working on from the projects table, I'll have to use the full join to retrieve information from both the tables. Now, as discussed earlier, the full outer join keyword is not applicable to MySQL database. So I'll have to implement a new logic here, which is quite simple. As you know, the full outer join is the result of combining the left and right table. So we'll first use the left join, then we'll use the right join, and finally we'll use the union operator, which is used to combine the resultant set of two or more select statements and execute it in a single statement. By the way, we haven't executed left and right join yet, so stay tuned for the upcoming videos on both these joins as well.
If getting your learning started is half the battle, what if you could do that for free? Visit SkillUp by SimpliLearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
So the following query would be, let me just take another tab again. So the following query would be select, now mention all those column details that you want to display in your resultant table. So I want to display the employee ID, employee name, project name, and the project manager's name as well. So you have to mention the column names in the format of table name dot column name. So I'm taking the alias name for the employee table as E. So E dot employee ID, comma, E dot employee name. Now for the projects table, I am taking the alias name as P. So P dot project name, comma, P dot project manager's name. From the table, that is project tables, sorry, the first table is employee, right? So we'll mention the employee. Now use the left join keyword, left join on projects on. Now you have to mention the condition on the basis of which you are connecting these two tables. Now if you look at the two tables, we have the employee ID that is present in both the tables. So that will be the common attribute to specify this condition here. So E dot employee ID equals to P dot employee ID. Now I'll just copy paste this same statement, and instead of using the left join, I'll use the right join keyword. So let's just replace the left join keyword with the right join, and I'll mention the union operator keyword to join these two tables. So that's it, guys. This is how you can use the full outer join in MySQL Workbench. Now let us just execute this statement and see the output. So there's a bit of error. Let me just check it once. So I forgot to mention the alias name here for both the tables, so that is why it is throwing an error. So as you can see, this is our output, and you can clearly see that the record from both the tables, that is the left table which is employee and the right table which is projects, are being displayed here. Now unlike the inner join which only fetches those records which have matching values in both the tables, full outer join retrieves all the values irrespective of whether they are matching or not. For instance, if you look at the employees having employee IDs here, 1012, 1013, 1016 and as well as 1018, we have their information present in table 1, that is the employee table here. But we do not have their information in the projects table here. And similarly, employees having employee IDs like 1022, 1023 and 1024, their information is present in the projects table, but it is not present in the first table, that is employee. You can see only the employee details having their employee's ID up to 1020 are being displayed in the employee table. Also, if you notice the resultant table here, guys, some of the employees like Kirti, Varun and Nitya have no projects assigned to their name. That's why we have null values in the project name column. That's because though their records are present in the employees table, but their employees IDs are not present in the project table. That means all these employees are yet to be assigned a new project. So if the values present in both the tables that does not match, it will simply just return null values. Similarly, we can see the other three projects that are present in the table, but there is no sign of employee details here, be it their employee ID or employee name, and it will just simply return the null values again here, because we do not have the employee information in the first table employee, even though their IDs are mentioned in the project table, and hence it will only return null values. Now suppose this is just a demo table having around 20 or 25 records, but if you consider a company's database in real life, it will have thousands of records. In order to access and manage various database tables and fetch information from those tables altogether, it becomes quite difficult, right? So this is why we use full join to connect the tables and retrieve each and every information from them. And if any column has null values, they can just simply update those rows or even delete them as per the requirement. SQL left join by SimpliCode. Let's just have a quick recap on what is SQL left join. So SQL left outer join, also known as left join, results in a table containing all the rows from the table on the left side of the join, that is the first table, and only the rows that satisfy the join condition from the table on the right side of the join, that is the second table. The missing values for the rows from the right table in the resultant table of the join are represented by null values. For example, if you consider here two tables, that is table A and table B, which is values 1, 2, 3, 4 in table A and 3, 4, 5, 6 in table B. Now if you apply left join for both these tables, it will display only the values from the left table, that is 1, 2, and the matching values from the right table, that is 3, 4. So the resultant table will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Let us now understand the syntax of the SQL left join statement. The syntax is followed as select column lists. These are basically the columns that you want to display in your resultant table from table 1, left join, which is the keyword we are using here, table 2 on table1.column equals to table2.column. Now here you have to mention a common attribute on the basis of which you are joining these two tables. So now that we've understood about SQL left join, let us now jump into MySQL Workbench to execute this using various examples. As you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and on the home page on the left side in the schema section you can view the databases and the tables that are present. So in this case we have the database SimpliCode and various tables in that, such as customer, department table, employee, orders, and etc. Now in order to execute this left join statement, we'll be going to use customer and the orders tables. So let me just display the values from both these tables. For that I'll use the select clause, select star from customer, which is the table name. So let us just execute. So as you can see, the customer table has various fields such as customer ID, customer name, age, address, and their phone numbers. Similarly, let us go to another tab and display the values that are present in orders table. Select star from the table, that is orders. So let us execute this statement. So as you can see in the output, the orders table has various fields such as product ID, customer ID, product name, that is the product they have purchased, quantity, the price of the product, and the purchase date. Now let's say if I want to fetch the details of all the customers and the product details that they have purchased, I'll have to connect these two tables, that is customer and the orders table, to get the resultant table. Now for that I'll use the left join statement. So let me just take another tab and execute the statement. So the following query would be select, mention the column names that you want to fetch in your resultant table. So I'm going to take here alias name for both the customer and the orders table as C and O. That's because instead of writing the full name of the tables each and every time, you can just simply use an alias name, which is a temporary name, which will save time as well. So for customer table, I'm taking as C. So I want to display the customer ID. So C dot customer ID. I want to display the customer name, customer's address. So C dot address. Now from the orders table, I want to mention the product's name that they've purchased, the quantity, price, and purchase date. So we have taken O as the alias name for our table. So O dot purchase name. Sorry, product name that they have purchased. I also want to display the quantity. So O dot quantity. its price as well, O dot price, and the purchase date, O dot purchase date from the table, first table, that is customer, mention the alias name C, left join, which is the keyword, on the second table, that is orders, O, on, mention the condition on which you are joining these two tables. So as you can see, we can find the customer ID and the customer ID in both the customer and the orders table. So we'll mention the customer ID as the common attribute here. So C dot customer ID equals to O dot customer ID. So let us just execute the statement and see the output. So as you can see, it will display the customer ID, customer name, address, product name, quantity, price and purchase date of the customers in our resultant table. Now let us understand what exactly the left join statement is doing here. Firstly, the database checks each and every row of the table and looks for a match in the right table based on the related columns. Now if a match is found, the data from the right table is added to the corresponding row of the left table. Now you can see customers having customer ID 10110, 10120, 10130 and 1014140. We have the details present in the first table as well as the second table, that is orders. So it will display all those records, and then if there are multiple matches, now in this case we can see a customer name Ajay is having two different records, who has bought sofa set and a TV. So the rows in the left table are duplicated here, that is the records are repeated in the resultant table in order to include all the records from the right table. So now for all the columns that you have fetched from the right table, that is orders, which is not satisfying the join conditions, then the values present in the columns will be resultant as null. That means if there is no matching value found from the right table, it will simply retain the row from the left table and inserts null into the corresponding columns of the right table. Now let me just explain this. Now if you see here, the customers like Adarsh and Pranay, who are having details in the first table, that is customer table, but they do not have their details in the orders table. So there is no sign of any their customer ID in the order table. That's why we do not have their details present in the resultant table. So it will just show the null values here. So basically left join is a combination of inner join, we can say, because it just checks the matching values from both the tables first, and then it will check for any additional or extra values that are left out from the left table, that is the table 1. Now you might have a question that when to use and why to use the left join. Like there are times when you want to keep rows from the first table that don't have any corresponding records in the second table. Now in this case, if you consider our example, we might want to see information about all the customers in our resultant table, even if they didn't place any orders. So in that case, we'll use the left join, which will be used to combine data from two tables so that all the rows from the left table are included in the resultant set, even if there is no matching value from the right table. SQL right join by SimpliCode. Now before getting into the execution part, let us just have a quick recap on what is SQL right join. SQL right outer join, also known as the right join, works the opposite way to that of left outer join. It follows the same rule as the left join, and the only difference is that all the rows from the right table and only the condition satisfying rows from the left table are present in the resultant table. So basically the right join returns all the records from the right table and only the matching records from the left table satisfying the condition. For example, let's say we have two tables, table A and table B, and when the right join is applied to the two tables, it would give all the records from the table B and only the matching records from the table A, that is table 1. Let us now look at the syntax of SQL right join. The syntax is same, and it is followed as select table1.column1, table1.column2, table2.column1, and so on. These are basically the columns that you want to display in your resultant table. From table 1, right join is the keyword we use here. Table2 on table1.column equals to table2.column. Now that we've understood what is SQL right join, let us jump into MySQL Workbench for the execution part.
Choose from over 300 in-demand skills and get access to 1,000 plus hours of video content for free. Visit SkillUp by SimpliLearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
So MySQL Workbench has started, and on the left side you can view the database SimpliCode, which has various tables such as customer, department, employee, orders. Now for time being, I've already created and inserted values into all these tables, and in order to execute the SQL right join, we are going to use the customer table and the orders table. So let me just display the values that are present in these tables. For that, I'm going to use the select statement. Select star from the customer table. So as you can see, the customer table has various fields such as customer ID, customer name, their age, their address, and the phone number. Similarly, let us just retrieve the records from the orders table as well. Select star from orders table. So the orders table has various columns such as product ID, customer ID, product name that they've purchased, quantity, price of the product, and the purchase date. Now, if I want to join these two tables, I'm going to use the right join statement. So the following query would be select. Now I'm going to use an alias name for both these tables. For customer table, I'm going to take as C, and for orders table, I'm going to take as O. Now I want to display the columns from the customer table only. So the columns are customer name. I want to display their address as well. So mention the column names, customer name, C.address. Now from orders table, I am going to display the product name that they've purchased, quantity, price, and purchase date. So O dot product name, comma, O dot quantity, comma, O dot price, and finally O dot purchase date. From the table 1, that is customer, mention the keyword right join, mention the second table name, that is orders, mention the condition on which you're joining these two tables now. Now as you can see, we have customer ID as well as the customer ID present in both the tables customers and orders. So we'll be taking the customer ID here as the common column on C.customer ID equals to O dot customer ID. Let us now execute the statement and see the output. So there is just an error. Let me check. Okay, I didn't mention the alias name here. So mention the alias name for both the tables. I guess it will display now. Name, okay. So as you can see, this is our resultant table, which basically displays the various columns: customer name, their address, product name, quantity, price, and purchase date. Let us now understand what exactly the right join is performing here. Now basically the right join clause starts selecting the data from the right table and matches it with the rows from the left table. The right join returns a resultant table that includes all the rows in the right table, whether or not they're having matching rows from the left table. Now if a row in the right table does not have any matching rows from the left table, the columns of the left table in the resultant set will have null values. Now clearly the SQL statement would return all the rows from the orders table here. As you can see, we have all the details like AC, TV, phone, cooker, car, sofa set, and phone, bike, etc. in our orders table. So it is basically retrieving all the data from the right table, and only those rows from the customer table where the join condition is being satisfied. Now it will only display the matching values here, because as you can see, we have customer ID 10110, 10120, 10130. So basically we have total 6 records, and we have them in the resultant table as well. Now if you consider the resultant table here, it is showing null values for some of the customer names and address, because though we have the product names mentioned in the orders table here, for example the product name car, sofa set, bike, and the customer IDs are 10140, 10160 and 10190, but we do not have their details present in the customer table, and that is the reason that it is showing as null here. So in this way you can use the SQL right join statement. Now you might have a doubt that when to use and why to use the right join statement. Again, it will depend on your own requirement. For instance, if you want to keep the records from the second table that do not have any corresponding records from the first table, in that case we will use the right join. Also, another point to be noted here, that the table that you have mentioned to the right side of the right join keyword, that is, we have taken here orders, right? So it will give the highest priority to this table, and it will display all the records from the orders table here, even if they do not have any matching values. Similarly, just take another scenario here. I'm just interchanging the tables here, like the first table I'm taking as orders and the second table I'm taking as customers. So when we execute this statement, it will display the records from all the records from the customer table, that is the first table, and even if they do not have the matching values, it will just display the null values here. That's because now if you consider Adarsh and Pranay, we have their details in the customer table, but we do not have their information present in the orders table, and that's the reason we can see that only their details are present, but they do not have the orders details that we have present here. So in this way you can use the right SQL join statement as well. So with that, we have come to the end of session, guys. That was all about the SQL right join statement. To learn more about the SQL concepts and about SQL joins, you can check out our video on our channel, Complete SQL Tutorial 2022 for Beginners, which will help you out. SQL keys by SimpliCode. Firstly, let us understand the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial by understanding what exactly are SQL keys, and then we'll understand why we use SQL keys. And finally, we'll go through some different types of keys that are used in SQL. So without any further ado, let's dive straight into today's topic on SQL keys. So what are keys in SQL? SQL keys plays an important role in relational databases. It is used for identifying unique rows from table. A key is a subset of columns in a table that allows a row to be uniquely identified. So a key can be more than just a column, and every row in the table will have a unique value for the key, or a unique combination of values if the key consists of more than just one column. Now, as you know, databases are used to store massive amounts of information which is stored across multiple tables. Now each table might be having more than thousands of records or rows. Now needless to say, there will be many duplicate rows with redundant information. So how do we deal with that? Now how do we manage these records that are storing only unique data? Now for that, we might need a combination of one or more columns in the database table to uniquely identify a row in a database. So in that case, we use the SQL keys. Now SQL keys creates constraints that can be used to enforce data integrity in SQL. Now as you know, a database must adhere to certain properties to maintain integrity and quality of the data that is storing. Keys and constraints are rules that define what data values are allowed in certain data columns. They are an important database concept as well as for SQL and are part of database schema definition. Defining keys and constraints is part of database design process and ensures that data within a database is reliable and maintains its integrity. Let us now understand why we use SQL keys. SQL keys identify each record separately and uniquely. Now a key is used in the definition of various kinds of integrity constraints, and a table in a database represents a collection of records or events for a particular relation. Now since there are thousands and thousands of such records, some of which may be duplicated. Now in order to identify these records uniquely and separately, we need SQL keys. SQL keys allows user to establish and identify a relationship between the tables as well. And finally, SQL keys access or manages the stored data quickly and smoothly. Now that we have understood what SQL keys are and why we use them, let us now discuss some of the various types of keys in SQL. SQL keys are broadly classified into various types such as primary key, super key, candidate key, alternate key, composite key, foreign key. Now let us discuss each and every type of key in detail with an example. Firstly, let us look at what exactly is primary key. The primary key is one of the most important and commonly used SQL keys in the databases. The primary key in SQL is a single or a group of fields or columns that can uniquely identify a row in a table. Putting it simply, it is a column that accepts unique values for each row. Therefore, whenever you use the insert into command to insert new values in a table, the value for a primary key column or columns need to be unique. Now, primary key advantages is mainly it uniquely identifies each row of a table. Also, it gets a unique index for each primary key column that helps with faster access. Now, there are properties which are helpful of SQL primary key. It enforces uniqueness by not accepting any duplicate values, and a primary key also uniquely identifies each field and can take only one primary key for a table. Now, a primary key column cannot accept null values as well. Let us consider an example here. Consider student table which is having various fields such as student ID, roll number, name, class, section, age and address. Now, if you look at the table clearly, student ID can be taken as a primary key here. Also, you can take the roll number, but since we are taking the records of all the students in a school, that's why we are taking the student ID as the primary key. Now, if you take the records of the students for a particular class, then you can take the roll number as a primary key as well. Let us now understand the syntax of primary key. Now, to create a new table with a column defined as a primary key, you can use the keyword primary key at the end of the definition of that column. And the syntax is create table, table name, and within the parentheses mention the column names and its column types, and finally mention the primary key inside the brackets. So for example, if I want to create a table which is having ID, last name, first name and age, in that I'm going to use the primary key here as ID. So in this way you can use the primary key in SQL. Next, let us discuss about the candidate key. A candidate key is defined as a set of one or more columns that can identify a record uniquely in a table. So basically, candidate key is a super key with no repeated attributes. By the way, we'll discuss about the super key in a while. The primary key should be selected from all the candidate keys, and every table must have at least a single candidate key, and a table can have multiple candidate keys but only a single primary key. Now, candidate key shouldn't have redundant attributes. That means it should not have any duplicate values in the table. Now, unlike primary key, the attributes of candidate key can contain null values, and as discussed, a table can have more than one candidate keys. And it is also called as the minimal super key, guys. That's because we select a candidate key from a set of super keys such that the selected candidate key is the minimum attribute required to uniquely identify the rows in a table. So let us understand this with an example. Consider the students table here, which is having various columns such as student ID, roll number, name, age, address and contact. Now, as you know, we can take the student ID as the primary key, and with that we can take the roll number as well as the contact of the students as the candidate key here, because all these three columns alone can uniquely satisfy the condition of the candidate key here. So in this way we can use the candidate keys in SQL. Next, let us discuss about alternate key in SQL. Alternate key are subset of candidate keys that can also uniquely identify tuples in a table which are not chosen as primary key. For example, consider the employee table here, which has columns employee ID, employee name, job, department number, PAN number, Aadhaar number and UAN. Now, if you look at the table, that columns that can uniquely identify each and every record are basically employee ID, PAN number, Aadhaar number and UAN number. Now, since we have taken the employee ID as a primary key and the rest of all the columns that are not chosen as a primary key are considered to be alternate keys. So in this case, we can take the PAN number, Aadhaar number, UAN number as our alternate keys. Next, let us discuss about the super key in SQL. Super key is another important key that is used day-to-day usage in SQL databases. A super key or a simple key is a combination of all possible attributes which can uniquely identify the row or tuples in a table. That means that a super key may have some extra attributes which isn't necessary for uniquely identifying the rows in the table. A super key in SQL is a superset of primary key, candidate key and alternate key. That means basically it is a combination of all the keys such as primary, candidate and alternate keys. As discussed, super key will have additional attributes that are not needed for any unique identification. And finally, super keys with the least number of attributes form the candidate keys. So let us take an example again. Consider the employee table here, and if you look at the possible keys that will be for super keys are employee ID PAN number, employee ID Aadhaar number, employee ID UAN, PAN number Aadhaar number, PAN number UAN, Aadhaar number UAN, employee ID PAN number as well as UAN, and finally PAN number, Aadhaar number and UAN. Now all the above keys are able to uniquely identify each row. So each of these keys is a super key. Now again in this example we have like more than 6 super keys, but all of them cannot become a candidate key here. Only those super keys would become a candidate key which have no redundant attribute. For example, if you take employee ID PAN number, this key cannot be considered as a candidate key because when we take this subset of this key, we get two attributes, that is employee ID as well as the PAN number. Now each of these attributes is basically a candidate key. So it is a minimal super key, but hence this key is not a candidate key. And finally, let us discuss about the foreign key in SQL. A foreign key is a column or combination of columns that is used to establish and force a link between the data in two tables to control the data that can be stored in the foreign key table. In a foreign key reference, a link is created between two tables when the column or columns hold the primary key value for one table and are referenced by the column or columns in other table. Now this column becomes a foreign key in the second table. The table with the foreign key is known as the child table, and the table with the primary key is known as the referenced or parent table. Now, as foreign key has bought the referential integrity in SQL, which means that it requires that a foreign key must have a matching primary key or it must be null. This constraint is specified between two tables, that is parent and child, and it maintains the correspondence between the rows in these tables. It means that the reference from a row in one table to another table must be valid. Now, the foreign key helps in maintaining the data integrity of the table and allows easy navigation between two instances or attributes. It is also used in SQL to make the database data consistent, and it is also used for the prevention of any action that may result in destruction of relation between these two tables. Let us understand this with an example. Now consider two tables here, employee and department. The employee table has employee ID, employee name, job, department number, PAN number, Aadhaar number and UN number. And the department table has employee ID and the department name. Now clearly the employee ID, which is the primary key in the first table employee, is acting as a cross-reference for the department table. That is, the employee ID acts as the foreign key here for the department table. So in this way you can use the foreign key in SQL. And similarly we have some other types of keys in SQL which are not that significant in its usage. The first one being is unique key. A unique key is same as a primary key, with the difference being the existence of one null value in a table field or a row. For example, consider a student table having student ID, roll number and its name. Now for some reasons, if the student is leaving the school, then his roll number might be deleted, although his student ID will be preserved for further assistance. So since there is a null value in roll number, it can be considered as a unique key, and student ID can be considered as a primary key. Similarly, we have composite key. A composite key is a combination of two or more attributes that can together can uniquely identify a tuple in a table. And that brings us to the end of today's session. That was all about the SQL keys. So let us just quickly recap what we have discussed, the different types of keys. So to summarize this, I've created a table here: employee ID, employee name, Aadhaar, passport, department ID, which is the table 1. That is employee table, and we have department ID and department columns in the second table, that is department table. Now here clearly employee ID is the primary key since it uniquely identifies each and every record in the table, and employee ID, Aadhaar number, passport can be taken as candidate keys because they are set of more than one primary keys so they can be considered as the candidate key here. Now alternate keys which are other than the primary key, that is employee ID. So I'm taking Aadhaar card and passport as the alternate keys here. Now the combination of all these keys such as primary key, candidate key, alternate key forms a super key. Now I'm taking the passport as the unique key since not everyone has a passport to their name. So I'm taking the passport attribute here as the unique key. And finally the foreign key is the department ID as it points to the reference to the second table, that is department table. So in this way you can use the SQL keys accordingly. Aggregate functions in SQL by SimpliCode. Firstly, let us go through the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial by understanding what is aggregate function, and then we'll go through different types of aggregate functions in SQL. And finally, we'll discuss the syntax of each and every aggregate function and implement its execution part in the MySQL workbench. So without any further delay, let's dive straight into today's topic. Now we have Akash, who is basically from a non-technical background and wants to upskill his career as a business analyst, and for that he's learning SQL. Now while learning these SQL concepts, he's unable to understand the aggregate functions in SQL. So he turns up to his friend Rohan for help. Now Rohan is already a certified data analyst, starts explaining him about the aggregate functions in SQL. The aggregate functions in SQL are used to perform calculations on multiple rows of single column and returns a single value. Now in SQL, each query delivers filtered results of groups of values as well as field values. Now SQL has these aggregate functions that can be used to summarize these enormous amount of data that is stored in the table. Now for an entire group or table, this function can generate a single value. They work with groups of rows and returns all the possible results based on these fields or columns. These aggregate functions are basically used with the group by and having clause in the select statement. The group by clause basically divides the result set into groups of values, and aggregate functions returns a single value for each groups. That means the group by basically identifies all the records that are present in a particular field or a column and combines them into a single set. Now that we have understood what are aggregate functions, let us go through the various aggregate functions that are present in SQL. Now in SQL, there are broadly 5 types of aggregate functions. They are count, sum, average, max, and minimum. Let us discuss about them in detail. Firstly, let us discuss about the count function. The SQL count function returns the number of rows in a table satisfying the criteria specified in the where clause. It sets the number of rows or non-null column values only. Let us look at the syntax. The syntax is followed as select count, which is the keyword, column name from table name, where condition, group by column, and order by column. Next, let us discuss about the sum function in SQL. The sum function returns the total summation of the value of a specified column value. Sum performs only on numeric columns only. Sum does not consider null values. It has optional arguments like all, distinct. All keyword is used to take all the values in the specified column. Now if you specify distinct keyword, it will remove all the duplicate values or the redundant values. Let us look at the syntax. The syntax is followed as select sum, column name from table name, where condition, group by column, and order by column. Next, let us look at the average function. The SQL average function calculates the average value of columns of numeric types. It returns the average of all null values. And the syntax is similar to that of count as well as the sum. Instead of the count and the sum keyword, you have to replace it with the average keyword. And the syntax is followed as select average, column name from table name, where condition. You can also specify the group by and the order by function as per your requirement here as well. Next, we have the max function. The SQL max function is used to find the maximum value or highest value of a certain column or expression. This function is useful to determine the largest of all the selected values of a column. And the syntax remains the same, which is select max is the keyword we use here, column name from table name. You can specify the condition as per your requirement using the where clause, and you can use the group by function as well. And values of a particular column or a field. and the syntax remains the same again. Instead of max, you have to use the minimum keyword here, and the syntax is followed as select minimum column name from table name, where condition, and group by condition as well. So now that we've understood all these different types of aggregate functions, let us jump into MySQL Workbench for execution part. As you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and on the home page to the left side we have the SimpliCode database, which has various tables such as customer, department, employee, orders, and etc. Now as far as the SQL aggregate functions are concerned, we are going to use the restaurant orders table here. So let me just display the records that are present in this table. For that I'm going to use the select statement. Select star from table name, that is restaurant orders. So as you can see, the table has various columns such as order ID, order date, item name, quantity, and price. By the way guys, I have taken this dataset from Kaggle. So if you want to work on the same dataset, we'll leave the link in the description below. So you make sure you check this out. So firstly, let us discuss about the count function here. So if I want to count the total number of records that are present in this table, I'll use the count statement here, as the following query would be select count, use the asterisk operator because we want to display all the records from the table, that is restaurant orders. So let me just execute this statement and see the output. So as you can see, there are a total of 307 records that are present in this table. Let's take another example. Now let's say if I want to find the total customers that are present in this table. So for that I'll use the order ID as the reference. That's because now if you consider for any customer, we'll get a different order ID when he places an order, right? So for that I'll use the order ID. So the following query would be select count. Now I'll use the distinct operator here so that we'll have the unique values. Order ID from the table, that is restaurant orders. So let me just execute the statement and we'll see the output. So as you can see, there are a total of 48 customers that are present in the table who have placed orders on various items. Now let's take another example. Let's say if I want to find the total number of orders of each item that is present in the table, then the following query would be select, take the column name, that is item name. Now I want to count all the records that are present, so I'm taking the count operator from table name, that is restaurant orders. Now I want to group all the identical values that are present for each of the orders that are present. So I'll take the group by function here, item name, and similarly I'm using order by so that I want to display the orders in their alphabetical order. So item name. So let me just execute the statement and see the output. So as you can see, it will display the total number of records that are present on each of the item that the order has been placed. Now we have a total of let's say 4 records of aloo gobi and 8 records of Bombay aloo, and so on and etc. So let me just verify the statement and see if the condition that is executed is true or not. So I'll use the select statement, select star from restaurant orders, where item name equals to we'll see the records of Bombay aloo. So let me just copy this field and see the output. So as you can see, we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So clearly we have a total of 8 records. That means our count function has been successfully executed. So in this way you can use the count function in SQL. You can also use the where condition here as per your requirement. Let's say if I want to display the list of all the items and the total number of orders of each and every item whose price is less than $3. And for that I'll use the where statement. So this syntax remains same. I will just use the where condition here, where price of the item, mention the column, is less than $3. So let's just execute the statement and see the output. So it will display all those records who's having the price less than $3. So let's just verify. For example, we'll take the garlic naan here as our example, and let's see if this condition is satisfied or not. Let me just copy this field and I'll paste it here, and let us execute the statement and see the output. So as you can see that we had 4 records of garlic naan, and it is being presented here, and its price is also 2.95, which is less than 3. Let us now discuss about the minimum as well as the maximum function in aggregate functions. Now let us take an example for that. Let's say if I want to find those items which is having the least amount of price. So for that, the following query would be select minimum is the keyword, and within the brackets mention the column that is price from the table that is restaurant orders. So let us select the statement and see the output. So as you can see, the minimum price of the item in the table is 0.5. So let us take another example here. Now let's say if I want to find all those items in the restaurant order table which is having the cheapest price. So for that, I'll use the query as select, display the item name and its price from the table that is restaurant orders, where price equals to, now we'll write a subquery here using the minimum statement, where select minimum price from the table that is restaurant orders. So let me just execute the statement and see the output. So it will display all the records in the restaurant order table and the item details which is having the least or the cheapest price. For example, mango chutney, onion chutney, mint sauce and red sauce is having the least price, that is 0.5. Now we can see there are duplicate values in our resultant table. So I'll just take the distinct keyword so that it will eliminate all the redundant values in the resultant table. So let me just execute the statement. So as you can see, these are the 4 items which is having the least price. Now similarly, you can find the maximum price of the order or the item that is present in the restaurant order table. For that, I'll use the max keyword here. So let me just execute the statement and see the output. So these are the 3 items which is having the maximum or the highest price in our table. That is Tandoori King Prawn Masala, King Prawn Balti and King Prawn Shashlik, which is having the price 12.95, which is the highest. So in this way, you can use the maximum and the minimum function to find out the highest and the lowest value that is present in your table. Let us now discuss about the sum function in aggregate functions. Now basically the sum function is used to calculate the total sum of all the records that are present in a particular column. Let's take an example. Let's say if I want to find the total amount that the restaurant has received on a single day, then the following query would be select sum. Now if you look at the orders table, we have different quantities for each item, right? So the price will be basically price into quantity. That will be the total value of the item. So I'll select sum price into quantity from table that is restaurant orders. So we have Q capital in the record, so we'll take as Q as capital. So let me just execute the statement and see the output. So there's a spelling mistake here. Let me just correct that and let us see the output now. So as you can see, it will show me the total sum of all the items that were placed on that particular day, and the value is $1689.9. Now you can name the column as per your wish as well. So I'll just take it as total amount. So in this way you can use the sum function as well. Let us now discuss about the average function. Now average function is also similar to that of sum, but basically it calculates the average of all the items or the records that are present in the table. Now let's say if I want to find the average price of all the items that are present in our restaurant orders table, then our following query would be select average price from restaurant table. So let us see the output. So as you can see, the average price of all the items that are present is $5.04. So in this way you can use the average function as well. Let's take another scenario for average price where we'll use the where condition. Let's say if I want to display all those items that are having price above the average price of all the items that are present in the table, then the following query would be select, I want to display the item name, so I'll take the item name column, their price from the table that is restaurant, where price is greater than, I'll write a subquery, select average price from the table that is restaurant orders. So let me just execute this statement and see the output. So basically these are all the items which are having price more than our average price that we have calculated earlier, that is 5.09. So in this way you can use the where condition as well as per your requirement. But there's a point to be noted here that the average and the sum function basically calculates only those fields which is having numerical values, whereas the count, minimum and maximum function can calculate the values of various data types such as character, string, as well as the numerical values. SQL order by versus group by statements by SimpliCode. Firstly, let us go through the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial by understanding what is SQL group by statement and see why we use group by clause. And then we'll understand what is SQL order by statement and why we use order by clause. And next, we'll see some key differences between these two statements. And finally, we'll understand the syntax and look into the execution part in MySQL Workbench. So what is SQL group by? Now SQL allows the user to store more than one type and up to almost 30 types of data types in as many columns as required. So sometimes it becomes difficult to find similar data in these columns. Now group by in SQL helps us club together all these identical rows present in the columns of a data. Group by statement is used to group together any rows of a column with the same value stored in them on a function specified in this statement. Basically, group by clause is used to group the rows with matching values using the specified condition. Now generally we use this group by clause with aggregate functions such as count, max, minimums, maximum and average. By the way guys, if you want to know more about the aggregate functions, make sure to check out our previous video on introduction to aggregate functions where we have discussed about these in detail. Now the SQL group by statement uses the split, apply, combine technique here. Now the different groups are split with their values and then an aggregate function is applied to these values of these groups, and finally the values are combined into a single row. Now if you consider this example here, we have two columns and we have three different items, A, B, C having different values. Now you can see A has two values 4, 7, 1, 3 and C has 9, 4. Now when we split this and apply the sum aggregate function, which results in the arithmetic sum of all these row values, as you can see now A has values 4 and 7. Now when I apply the sum it becomes 11, and B 1, 3 it becomes 4, and C 9, 4 it becomes 13. So it will display all these identical rows having matching values and into a resultant set. So in this way you can use the SQL group by. Let us now understand the syntax of SQL group by statement. The syntax is followed as select column 1, column 2 up to a number of columns from table name where condition group by column name. Now the group by statement lets the database system user know that we wish to group the same value rows of the column specified in the statement's column names parameter. And you can also use, there is an optional where clause which can be used to specify any condition according to which the row are to be selected. Next, let us understand what is SQL order by statement. The order by clause in SQL sorts the data of a column in the SQL database. It helps us sort the column in both ascending as well as the descending order. The ASC keyword helps us sort in ascending order, while the DESC keyword sorts in descending order. And if no keyword is specified in which we have to sort the records in the column, it will take the default value. The order by clause sorts the record in ascending order by default if we do not mention any specific keyword, that is ASC or DSC. Now the order by clause can only be for select statements, and the order by keyword is used to sort the resulting table in either ascending order or descending order based on the column specified in the statement's column name. Now another important thing to be noted here is that the order by statement always appear after the group by statement and is applied to the group of rows formed. Now let us look at the syntax. The syntax is followed as select column 1, column 2 from table name, where condition, which is optional as per your requirement, group by column list, order by column name, and you can mention the ASC or DESC keyword as per your need. Now that we have understood about both of these statements, let us now understand the differences between group by and order by. Now group by statement is used to group the rows that have the same value, whereas the order by is used to arrange the data obtained in the resultant table of a query in sorted form. Now the group by is always used before the order by clause in the select statement, whereas the order by statement is used after the group by clause in the select statement. Now in group by statement, the attribute under the aggregate function cannot be in group by clause, whereas in order by, the attribute under aggregate function can be in order by clause. That means if the group by clause contains an attribute that is not under select clause, or if it is under select clause but under aggregate function, then the query becomes invalid and it throws an exception. Hence we can say the group by clause is always used in collaboration with the select clause. Now in group by, it is mandatory to use one of the aggregate functions like count, sum, average, minimum, maximum, etc. Whereas in order by statement, it is not compulsory and mandatory to use the aggregate functions. And finally, the group by clause controls the presentation of rows or tuples, whereas the order by statement controls the presentation of columns. That means the group by is only concerned with the values of identical rows in the resultant set, whereas the order by statement basically arranges the data in the columns in either ascending or descending form. Now that we have understood about both these SQL statements, let us jump into MySQL Workbench for execution part.
Choose from over 300 in-demand skills and get access to 1,000 plus hours of video content for free. Visit SkillUp by SimpliLearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
So as you can see, MySQL Workbench has started. Now, in order to execute the group by and order by statement, we'll consider the data set of an employee which I have already downloaded from Google. So let me just import the data set into the MySQL Workbench. For that, all you have to do is just go to the tables tab and right click on it, and you'll find table data import wizard. Click on that. Now it will ask to import the location from where you have saved. So I have saved my file in desktop, so I'm just selecting the file. Now once you have selected the file, click the next button here. Now it will ask if to name the table, whether to use the existing table or to create a new table. So I'm just taking a new table here, employees1, and click on next. It will display all the columns that are present in that CSV file. So just click on next, and it will start to prepare the import. Now depending upon the number of records present in the data set, it will take a bit of time, so don't worry. Now as you can see, our data set has been successfully imported, so we'll click on next again. So it is showing that 49 records have been imported successfully. So let me just refresh the schema here, and as you can see, employees1 has been shown in the table section. So let me just display the records that are present in these tables. For that, I'm using the select statement, select star from employees1. So as you can see, our employees1 table has employee ID, first name, last name, email, phone number, hiring date, job ID, salary, manager ID, and finally department ID. Now firstly, let us discuss about the group by clause. Now let's say if I want to fetch the total employees in all the departments from the employees one table, then the following query would be select. Now I can take the employee ID to display the total number of employees because each and every employee has a different employee ID to their name. So select count employee ID as total, comma, I want to display their department ID as well. So I'm taking department ID from employees table, employee 1, group by. Now we want to group all their department ID, right? So I'm taking department ID. So let me just execute the statement and see the output. Okay, the table name is wrong here, so let me just correct it. So as you can see, it will display the total employees that are present in each and every department. Now if you look at the department ID column, we have the values in a random way. Now in order to display in a systematic and a proper way, this is where we use the order by statement. So we can sort the department ID values in the ascending or descending manner as per a requirement. So I want to display in ascending order, so order by department ID. Let us execute the statement and see the output. So as you can now see that the department ID are being displayed in the ascending manner, that is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 and so on up to 110. So in this way you can use the group by and order by statements. So that was all about the group by and order by statement. So this is just to give a quick review on how these two statements works. Now if you want to learn more about the order by statement, make sure to check out our SQL order by video on our channel, where we have discussed about it more in depth and with more examples as well. And also you might have a doubt that when to use group by and when to use the order by statement. Now if you want to form the group of the set of records or the identical columns having values in them, then you must use group by clause. And in case you want to arrange the data of a single or a multiple column with variable different conditions, or in that case you have to use the order by to sort the data in ascending or descending order.
Between operator in SQL. Now SQL provides us with many such tools that help in retrieving useful information from all kinds of data. Sometimes we need to retrieve only a particular range of values from all the values of a tables column. For example, to retrieve the information about all the employees of a company born in a particular decade or year, or let's say to find the salaries of all those employees in a particular range, you need a tool for that. Now SQL between operator helps in performing these activities and is an integral part of this query language. So in today's session, we are going to discuss about the between operator in detail with its syntax and execution in MySQL Workbench. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's topic. But before we begin, if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, consider getting subscribed to our channel SimpliCode to stay updated with all the latest technologies, and hit that bell icon to never miss an update from us. So without any further delay, let us jump straight into today's topic. So as you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and before getting into the execution part, let us just quickly understand what is between operator in SQL. Now the SQL between operator is used to test whether an expression is within a range of values or not. This operator is inclusive, so it includes only the start and end values of the range, and the values can be textual, numerical type or date type. Now between operator can be used with select, insert, update as well as the delete command. So to get a clear picture of how this operator works, let us get into the syntax of it. Now the syntax is followed as select column names from table name, where column name between range start and range ends. So the columns to be retrieved are specified after the select statement, and the table the columns are being retrieved from the specified is in the from statement, and then we have the between operator which is used in the where clause. The column we want to apply the range condition on is specified with the column name parameter, and the starting value of the range of values is specified in the range start parameter, and the ending value in the range and parameter. So now that we've understood how exactly the between operator works, let us get into some examples and understand its execution part. So let us take an example to understand the SQL between operator. So I'm taking the new employees as the example here. So let me just display the values. For that, I'm using the select operator, select star from new employees. Let us execute the statement. So the new employees table has various columns such as employee ID, first name, last name, email, phone number, hiring date, job ID, salary, manager ID, department ID. That's it. So right. Now we'll take a simple example to understand the between operator. So let's say if you want to retrieve the ID and name of the employees with IDs in the range, let's say now we have IDs up to range like 198, 200, 201. So let us take the range between 110 and let's say 170. Then we'll use the following query as select employee ID, comma first name, from table that is new employees. Use the where condition where employee ID between is the keyword 110 and 170. So let us execute this and we'll see the output. So as you can see, it will display the records of all those employees whose employee ID lies between the range that is 110 and 170. Now, if any employee who is having their employee ID as 110, even their values are also included in the resultant set. And similarly, if any employee has 170 in their as their employee ID, even their data will be in the resultant set. Now, in the table, we do not have any employee who's having the employee ID as 170, so we do not have the information now. So in this case, it will only display only the details of all those employees who's having the employee ID range in 110 and 170. Well, moving ahead, let us take next another example. Now we can use the order by statement also to sort the result based on some columns. Now let's say if you want to retrieve the details of all those employees with salary ranging from 35,000 to let's say 75,000. And in order to sort this result based on the salary, we'll use the following query as select. I want to display all the details, so I'm using the star operator, select star from new employee where salary between 35,000 and let us take let's say 55,000, right? And I'll use the order by salary so that it will display the values of all the salaries in the ascending order. So let us execute and we'll see the output. So as you can see, there are only 5 employees in our new employees table. For example, Renske Ladwig, who's working as a clerk, is having salary 36,000, which is in the bracket of 35,000 and 55,000. Similarly, we have Diana Lawrence, whose salary is 42,000. Similarly, we have Jennifer Wallen, whose salary is 44,000, and so on. So in general, we use the between operator to find the range of values. Like for example, we are finding the salary range, right? So in a similar way, we can use the between operator to find the range between two given values of a particular column. Now, similarly, we can use the not operator with between as well. Now, we can also use the not operator with the between operator to select the values that do not belong to that specified range. Now, instead of using between, if I mention the not between keyword here, it will basically display all those records of employees whose salary is not in the range of 35,000 and 55,000. Now, it will display the records of all those employees. Like if you take Herman Bear, whose salary is 10,000, which is not in the bracket or in the range of 35,000 and 55,000. Similarly, it will display the records of all those employees whose salary is not in between that range, which is 35,000 and 55,000. In this way, you can use the not between keyword as well, which will exclude the results that are not in the given range. Now, you can use the between operator with the date values as well. Now, when using the between with dates or the date time values, we need to remember to enclose the date in single inverted commas, as otherwise the query will return a syntax error. So let us take an example here. Let's say if I want to retrieve the details of all those employees whose hiring date is in between, let's say 2000 and 2007. Now, as you can see, our hiring date is between like 2005, 2004, 2002, and similarly, etc. Right? So in that case, I want to display all those employee details whose hiring date was in between 2000 and 2007. So in that case, the following query would be select star from new employees again, which will display all the records, where hire date between, mention the inverted commas. So I'll take from 1st January 2000 and 31st December 2007. Right? So let us execute this statement and we'll see the output. So it will display me the records of all those employees who have their hiring date in between this range, which is January 1st, 2000 and 31st December 2007. So in this way, you can use the between operator with the date values as well. Right. Moving ahead, now we can use the between operator with the text values as well. Between operator can also be used with the character data types. Like for example, while using any text values, we need to remember to again enclose the data in single inverted commas. Otherwise, it will return a syntax error. So let us take an example here. Let's say we want to retrieve all the employee details and along with their names belonging to a range from, let's say, alphabets A and J. That means we want the details of all those employees whose name is in between the first letter, that is A, and the letter J. In that case, the following query would be select star from new employees, where I'm taking first name, right? First name between letter A and letter J. Enclose them in the inverted commas and we'll see the output now. So let us also we'll use the order by statement so that we'll have in ascending order. I think there is no need for that, so we'll just directly execute this. So as you can see, it will display the records of all those employees whose name is in the range with starting letter A and the starting letter J. Now you can see Donald O'Connell, whose first name starts with D, right? So it is in the range of A and J. It lies between A and J. And similarly, we have Herman, we have Alexander and David, Guy, Himuro, etc. So in this way, you can use the between operator to find the values in a particular range which have only text data types. And that brings us to the end of today's session, guys. That was a quick tutorial on how to use the between operator in SQL. If you remember all the SQL between operator rules and syntaxes, you can easily customize your queries to retrieve the type of information that you want. This tool, along with other SQL tools, enables us to write different kinds of essential queries. Now, this between operator is generally used to find the values within a certain range. For example, you can find the salaries of the employees within a certain brackets. You can also find the marks of the students in a particular range. And similarly, you can find the details of the products which lie in a certain range. So in all these cases, you can use the between operator as per your requirement. So now that you know about the between operator, it is time for you to start using the between operator along with other SQL commands, clauses, and operators to query your database tables.
SQL where versus having clause. Firstly, let us discuss the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial by understanding what is SQL where clause, and then we'll discuss what is SQL having clause, and then we'll have a detailed in comparison between where and having clause. And finally, we'll look at the syntax and implement the execution part in MySQL Workbench. So let us now dive into today's topic. So firstly, we'll discuss what is where clause. The SQL where clause is used to specify a condition while fetching the data from more than one table or by joining with multiple tables. If the given condition is satisfied, then only it returns a specific value from the table. Now we can use the where clause to filter the records and fetch only the necessary records from our database. The where clause is not only used in the select statement, but it is also used in the update, delete, etc. Let us now understand the syntax. The syntax is simple and is followed as select column 1, column 2, so on from table name where condition. Let us now understand with an example. Consider the employee table here, which is having various columns such as ID, name, age, city, and salary. Now let's say if I want to find the employee who is having the maximum salary in this table. And for that, I'll write a query stating select star from employee where salary is greater than 50,000. Now if you implement this query, it will basically show those records which is having salary more than 50,000. Now if you look into the table, Abhay Kumar, whose ID is 1175, is having 52,600, which is greater than 50,000. So in this way, where basically meets the condition that is set by the user. Let us now understand what is having clause in SQL. The having clause is generally used along with the group by clause, and having clause is used to filter the results obtained by the group by clause based on some specific condition. Having clause is quite similar to that of where clause, as both are used to filter records in SQL. But where clause cannot be used with the aggregate functions like count, max, sum and etc. Which is why having clause is needed, and that is the reason we use the having clause. Let us now understand the syntax. The syntax is also similar. You have to mention the having keyword here instead of where. And the syntax is followed as select column 1, column 2 from table name, group by, column 1, column 2, so on, having, and mention the condition. Now group by clause is used to arrange the data into groups, and having clause is used in the column operations, and it basically group all the identical data and gives you the condition that is specified by the U. Let us understand this with an example. Again, consider the same employee table here, which is having ID, name, age, city and salary. Now, as we know, we have to use aggregate functions. So I'm using the average function here. And since the having clause also uses a group by, so that is the reason I'm also using the group by. Now, let's say if I want to find the average salary of all the employees from different cities, then the following query would be select city average salary from employee group by city. Now when I perform this query, this will be the following output, where it will show the resultant set of all the cities and their average salary. Now we have New Delhi that is being repeated twice, which is 2 records, and we have Ghaziabad, which is 2 records. Now New Delhi has 2 records which is having salary as 36,000 and 38,000. Now if you consider the average, it is basically 37,000. And similarly for Ghaziabad, we have 3 records which have salaries 46,500, 42,600, 52,600. Now when you calculate the average, it is showing us 47,233. Now that you have applied this, now let us have the having condition here. Now let's say if I want to find the average salary of all those employees from different cities who is having average salary greater than 40,000. Now in this case, if I implement this query, this will be the following output. As you can see, both Ghaziabad and Noida has the average salary more than 40,000, that is 47,233 and 48,000. So in this way, you can use the SQL having clause as well. Let us now look at the differences between these two clauses, that is SQL where and having clause. Now SQL where clause basically filters the individual rows in the table based on the specific condition, whereas the having clause filters groups instead of one row at a time. Now, as discussed earlier, where clauses can be used with select, update, delete statement, whereas the having clause can be used only with the select statement. Now, where comes before group by, which means that where clause filters rows performing aggregate calculations, and having comes after group by, which means the having clause filters rows after performing aggregate calculations. So consequently, having is slower than where in terms of complexity and efficiency as well. Now as discussed earlier, where clause cannot contain aggregate functions, and having clause can contain aggregate functions such as count, sum, average, etc. Now SQL where is considered as a pre-filter because it performs the row operations first, and having clause is considered as a post-filter because it performs the column operations after grouping the data. So now that we have understood about these both types of SQL clauses, let us jump into MySQL Workbench for the execution part.
If getting your learning started is half the battle, what if you could do that for free? Visit SkillUp by SimpliLearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
So as you can see, MySQL Workbench has started, and on the left side you can view the SimpliCode database, which is having different tables such as customer, department, employee, employees one, and etc. Now to perform the where and having clause statements, we'll use the employees once table. So let me just display the records present in that table. So I'll use the select operator, select star from employee one table. Click on the execute button. As you can see, the employees one table has various columns such as employee ID, first name, last name of the employee, their email ID, phone numbers, hiring date, job ID, salary, manager ID, and department ID. So firstly, let us discuss about the where clause, or basically where condition. So let's say if we want to fetch the records of all those employees from these employees one table whose salary is let's say less than 5,000 and they belong to department 30. So in that case, the following query would be select star from employees table 1 where salary is less than 5,000. Now I'm using the AND operator, which is basically a logical operator. So whenever you're performing the where condition, you can use the logical operators and comparison operators, logical operators such as AND, OR, between, etc. And the comparison operators like less than, equal to, less than, greater than, equals to, etc. So I'm using the AND operator here, and department ID is equals to 30. So let me execute this statement and see the output. So as you can see, there are a total of 4 employees whose salary is less than 50,000 and they belong to the department 30. Now you can also, as discussed earlier, you can also perform the update operations using the where clause as well. Now let's say if I want to update the salary of employee who is having employee ID 116 as let's say 10,000, then the query would be update table name, that is employee 1, set salary equals to 10,000 where employee ID is equals to let's say 116, and the employee name is Shelly Baida. So I'm just taking that example. So let me just execute this query. So as you can see, our query has been successfully executed. So let me just verify whether it is executed or not. So I'll use the select statement, select star from employee 1 where employee ID equals to 116. So let me run this query and we'll see the output. So as you can see, the employee Shelly Baida, who's having employee ID 116, and their salary has been changed into 10,000 here successfully. So in this way, you can use the where clause as well. You can also use the where clause for delete also. Now let's say if I want to delete the details of the employee who's having employee ID as 120, let's say, then I'll use the delete statement. Delete from employee 1 where employee ID is equals to 127. So let me just execute this query. So as you can see, our query has been successfully executed here, and the details of the employee who's having employee as 127 has been deleted successfully. So in this way, you can use the where clause to perform various operations such as select, update, delete, etc. using comparison and logical operators. Let us now understand about the having clause. For that, let me take an example. Let's say if we want to display the records of all those employees present in different departments and whose average salary is greater than, let's say, 5,000. So in that case, the following query would be select. Now I want to display the department ID, so I'm taking the department ID column, average salary from employees 1. Now as you know, while using the having clause, we have to use the group by statement as well. So I'll group by all the department IDs since we have multiple department IDs present in the table. Department ID having average salary greater than $5,000. Okay, let me just display the output. So our query has been successfully executed, and as you can see here, it is displaying all the different departments and their average salaries as well here. Now I can use the different aggregate functions here as well. If I want to count the number of employees in each department, I can take the count function. So let me just use it. Count employee ID, which will basically count all the total employees in the different departments. So let me just execute this statement. So as you can see, it will display the count of all the employees that are present in different departments and having average salary more than 50,000. So in this way, you can use the having clause as well. Now we can also combine both the where condition as well as the having condition as well. Now we can combine the where and having clause together in a select query. In this case, the where clause is used first to filter individual rows, and then the rows are then grouped to perform the aggregate calculations, and finally the having clause is used to filter the grouped data, that is the identical groups that are having the same values. Now as discussed earlier, we have to use the where condition before the group by. So I am just taking the where clause before the group by, and let's say if I want to display only those departments that are having more than 80 as the department ID. So department ID greater than 80. So let me just display. So as you can see, it will display only those records where the department ID is more than 80, that is 90, 100 and 110, and the details of all the employees whose average salary is more than 500. Now I can also use the order by statement here in order to mention all these records in a systematic manner, that is an ascending or descending order. So order by department ID. So let us execute this query. So as you can see, it will showcase the department ID values in the ascending order, that is 90, 100 and 110. So in this way, you can use the having clause as well in SQL. Subqueries in SQL by SimpliCode. So what is a subquery? An SQL subquery is a query which is returned inside another query. A subquery is usually added within the where clause of another SQL select statement. In a subquery, the outer query's result is dependent on the result set of the inner query, and that is the reason why subqueries are also called as the nested queries. A subquery is also called as an inner query or inner select, while the statement containing the main query or the parent query is called as the outer query or outer select query statement. Now the inner query executes first before its parent query or the outer query, so that the results of an inner query can be passed to the outer query. Let us understand this with an example here. Now consider this syntax over here, which is followed as select employee name department from employee, where salary equals to select maximum salary from employee. Now select employee name department from employee is the outer query and the rest part is the inner query. Now when the above query is applied to the given employee table, here the subquery is executed first, which select the maximum salary from the employee table. Then the resultant is the passed onto the where clause of the outer query. Now this outer query is executed, which selects the rows, in this case the employee name and the department, from the employee table, where the salary is equals to the resultant of the subquery, which is it selects the maximum salary from the employee table, returns the final result. So let us now look at the types of subqueries that are used in SQL. Now subqueries in SQL are majorly used with insert, delete, select, update statement along with the comparison operators like less than, equals to, greater than or equals to, between, in and etc. Subqueries are used to execute a query dependent on the outcome of another query, and it allows the user to fetch the results without writing two distinct queries, and it is time saving as well. So now that we have understood what is subqueries and its different types, let us jump into MySQL Workbench to execute the various subqueries that are used in SQL. So as you can see, MySQL Workbench has started and we have various tables in our database SimpliCode such as customer, department, employee, employee1 and so on. Firstly, let us discuss the subqueries using the select statement. Now in SQL, in most of the cases, we use the select statement to perform the subqueries. So for that, let us consider the table employees1 here. So let me just display the records that are present in the table. For that, I'm using the select statement. Select star from employee1. So let us run the query and see the records. So as you can see, the employees1 table has various columns such as employee ID, first name, last name, email, their phone number, hiring date, job ID, salary, manager ID and department ID. Now let us understand this concept with the help of an example for executing the select statement using the subqueries. Now let's say if I want to find all those employees whose salary is less than the average salary of all the employees that is present in the employees1 table. So in this scenario, we'll use a subquery to get those employees whose salary is less than the average salary from the employee table. And the following query would be select. Now since I want to display all the records, I'm using the star operator from employees1 where salary is less than, and within the parenthesis we have to mention the subquery, that is select average salary from employees1 table. So let us execute the statement and see the output. There is an error in the code, just let me check. So yeah, I forgot to mention the parenthesis here. Make sure you write the subqueries always within the parenthesis, otherwise it will show an error here. So now let us understand this query and let us break this query statement to understand in a better way. Now here the query to find out the average salary is the subquery here. That is the select average salary from the employee1 table. So let me just execute this statement. So we have the average salary, that is 6,708.66. So now the outer query takes the result of this inner query, which is basically the subquery, and executes the remaining SQL command based on the result. So the subquery first returns the average salary, that is 6,708, and this result is passed on to the outer query, which fetches the details of all those employees who's having salary less than the average salary, that is 6,708. So when I execute this statement, it will display the employees of all those records who's having salary less than 6,708, that is 2,600, 4,400 and so on, in this way. So in this way you can use the select statement to perform the subqueries in SQL.
If getting your learning started is half the battle, what if you could do that for free? Visit SkillUp by SimpliLearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
Now, other than the SQL select statement, SQL subqueries can also be used with the insert statement. In the insert statement, the data returned from the subquery is used to insert the data from one table, that is the existing table, into another new table. Now, let us consider the employee table here. So let me just display the records. Select star from employee. Let me just display the records now. So the employee table has various fields such as employee ID, employee name, age, designation, city, total salary, date of joining, department ID and bonus. Now if I want to copy this data from the employee table into a new table, let's say employee new table, so I can use the subqueries with the insert statement here. So let me just create a new table here, and the query is followed as create table employee new. The employee new table has the employee ID, employee name, designation, total salary, that's it. So I'm taking primary key as employee ID as it uniquely identifies each record in the table. So let me just execute the statement. Now I'll use the select statement, employee new. Now as you can see, the employee new table has various fields: employee ID, employee name, designation and total salary, but we do not have any values that are present in the employee new table. So we'll use the subquery using the insert statement to insert values into it. Now let's say if I want to insert the values from the employee table, that is the existing table, whose salary is greater than 30,000. So I want to fetch only those records from the employee table into the employee new table whose salary is greater than 40,000. So the following query would be insert into the new table, that is employee new, select. Now since we are only concerned with the employee ID, employee name, designation and total salary, we'll mention only those columns: employee ID, employee name, designation, total salary, from the previous existing table, that is our employee table, where total salary, I'm using the in operator here, and within the parenthesis I'll write the subquery, that is select total salary from employee where total salary is greater than 40,000. Close the parenthesis and let us execute this statement now. So our statement has been successfully executed. So let me just display the records again. Select star from the table employee new. So as you can see, it will insert only those records for all those employees. Total salary is greater than 40,000. So we have only two employees, Kiran and Ajay, who is having salary as 50,000 and 60,000. Now the insert statement basically specifies that new data is added to this table, that is the employee new table. And as we are copying all the data from the employee table, which is our existing table, to the new employee new table, there is no need to specify the column name in the insert statement. Otherwise, you would need to mention the column name in which you want to add the data. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that the table structure has to remain the same. Even if the column names are a bit different, the column data types must remain the same in order to insert the data using subqueries from one table to another table. So in this way, you can write subqueries using the insert statement as well. Also, in a similar way, you can use the update as well as the delete statement to modify the existing data that is present in the table. To know more about it, make sure to check out our SQL full course for beginners 2022 on our channel, Web SQL. Firstly, let us discuss the agenda for today's session. We'll start the tutorial by understanding what is Web SQL, and then we'll understand why we use Web SQL, and then we'll go through different methods used in Web SQL, and next we'll understand some insert and read operations performed in Web SQL using syntaxes, and finally we look at the various queries, its syntax and execution using examples. So without any further delay, let's get started with today's topic. So what is Web SQL? Web Storage API offers a really nice way to store key value pair data information within the user browser itself without any hassle and in a convenient way. But what if you need to store complex relational data and perform simple or complex queries on this data? Well, Web Storage does not allow this, but Web SQL database does. Basically, Web SQL database is a web browser API specification for storing and managing data in databases that can be queried using a variant of SQL. That means, just like any other SQL databases, Web SQL also provides a way to store the data in the database that can be queried using various SQL statements. Now, the W3C or the World Wide Web Consortium stopped supporting the usage of Web SQL database specification. However, it is still implemented and supported by some browsers like Google Chrome, Android, and some mobile versions of Safari and Apple iOS as well. Now, although WebSQL tends to be labeled as an HTML5 feature, WebSQL database is not exactly a part of the HTML5 specification, but it is a part of a separate suite of specifications which introduces a set of APIs to manipulate client-side databases using SQL. Now, client side means that the processing takes place on the user's computer. It requires browsers to run the scripts on the client machine without involving any processing on the server. Now, server side means the processing takes place on a web server, and this processing is vital and important to execute the task required by the user on the web. Now, since the client side script is executed on the client's computer, it is visible onto the client, and on the other hand, the server side script is executed in the server, hence it is not visible to the users. So WebSQL is kind of risky to use because it stores the data at the client side and not on the server side. So if the user or someone outside your own browser who has the HTML script or the syntax ready of the WebSQL that you are creating, he can have the access and he can manage the browser or the API as well. So that is why WebSQL helps developers to perform database operations on client side, like creating databases, opening transactions, creating tables, inserting values to tables, deleting and reading data from it. The core methods in WebSQL. Now, core methods are an important concept of WebSQL because they are used to perform CRUD operations like create, update, delete and read operations on the database. Now in WebSQL there are mainly three core methods. They are open database, transaction and finally we have execute SQL. Firstly, open database. Now open database, it creates a database object using the existing database, or it can also create a new one. Next we have transaction. This method is used to control a transaction and can perform commit or rollback depending on the situation. And finally, execute SQL. It is basically used to execute read and write operations to perform the result of the query. That means it is used to execute the actual SQL query that we are performing on the WebSQL. So let us now discuss about them in detail. Creating and opening database in WebSQL. As you all know, to work with SQL queries, you must first create a database. So the first step we are going to follow is creating a database. Now in order to start communication with the database, you have to use the open database method, which will basically create a database object. Now if you try to open a database that doesn't exist, the system will automatically create a database for you, and eventually a database object will be created for that. And open the database, we have to use the following syntax as var dbobj. dbobj is basically the object that I have taken to our database, is equals to open database is the method, and inside the parentheses we have to mention first the database name, version number, text description, size and creation callback. So let me just explain about these terms. So by using this open database function, we can basically create a database in WebSQL and open the database, and these are basically the 5 parameters that are accepted by the open database function. The first one is database name. This argument provides the name of the database, which is mandatory to be provided, otherwise you will get an error. Next we have the version number. The version number is also required. Now some database may be in version 1.0 or some may be in 2.0. So if you know the version number of the database, then only you can open the database that you are working on. Next we have the text description. This argument describes the database and provides information about the database. Now you can provide any sort of description to your database that you are working on. Next we have the size of the database. This argument decides the size of the database basically, which is generally in MB. And finally we have a creation callback. Now if the database does not exist and yet it is being created, this callback will be invoked. So it is optional and is not needed for the database to be created, and eventually we can apply if we want. So in this way you can successfully create and open a database. So let me just take an example here. I have taken DB as my database object here, open database, and the name of the database is library and the version is 1.0, and the text description I've given is my library, and the size I've taken is 5 into 1024 into 1024, which is basically 5 MB. Now the size is basically from 1 MB to 5 MB max, so you have to take in that range itself. Next, let us discuss about how we create transaction and use execute SQL method. Now once the database is created and open, we want to create a new table to store and manage our data. Now, any SQL operation like creating a table or inserting data into a table has to happen in a transaction. A transaction is basically a set of operations in Web SQL. Now, transaction provides two features, namely rollback and commit. If a transaction fails at any point in time or a query has an error, then it will be rolled back, including all the queries that you have inserted. And if all the queries are successfully executed, then the transaction will be committed. Now, the syntax for creating a transaction is basically db, which is our database object, dot transaction, which is the keyword or the method. Now, inside the parenthesis, we will write a function tx. Tx is basically the object of the transaction. Now, since we created our database object db and using the open database method, we can perform a transaction here using the database method transaction. Now, the transaction basically can take up to 3 arguments. The first one is transaction callback, the second one is error callback, and the last one is success callback. Now, these arguments are optional, and so here I'm just using the transaction itself. Now, in the transaction callback, I have an attribute tx that, as we've discussed earlier, which is a transaction object. Now, I'll use the execute SQL method of this object to create a new table, that is author. Now, I'm using this execute SQL method to create a table author which has ID, first name, last name as different columns. Now, just like in SQL, we provide a primary key to one of the column which uniquely identifies each and record. Similarly, we provide with the keyword unique to identify the records uniquely in this. So for that, I'm taking ID as our unique column. And once it's done, to execute this query in WebSQL, we will use the method execute SQL as usual. So let us now discuss how to insert a new record in our table to our database. So now that you have a database that is library and have created a table that is authors earlier, we'll now insert the records into our table. Now for that, I'll be using the execute SQL method again on the transaction instance. So the open database remains the same. Now additionally, I'll just take the transaction method here. Following that, I'm using a function t. So the query would be t.execute SQL, and similar to that of what we write in our SQL statement, we use the same insert command here as well, and the syntax is insert into authors, first name, last name, and values I'm taking as James Priest. Now consider the below example, which is same. I'm just inserting some more values into our table. For that, I'm using another execute SQL method using the tx function, which is an attribute to our method that we have used in our function. So tx.execute SQL, insert into author. Now I'm taking another attribute, or say I'm adding another column ID, which is unique. So first name and last name, values as I'm taking ID as 2, Rohan, Nanda. Similarly, I'm taking another record, that is 3, Kiran and Kumar. So in this way, you can use the insert statement to add new records into our table in WebSQL. So now that we have inserted some values into our table, we need to read the data that we have inserted into our table, right? So to do that, we need to create another new transaction, and another execute SQL command should be implemented here. So now that we know how to add the data into our databases, now you have to read and display those records back to the user in their browser. And for that, we need to create a simple select statement to read all values from the authors table here. Now when execute SQL is called this time, a callback method is passed that accepts a transaction object, and a result set containing the rows that we have inserted into our table will be returned in our SQL statement. Now you can see the callback method that I have used is display result, which I am again putting it in the select statement as well. Now as the display result method iterates through these rows, it formats the person's name in the list and adds it to an unordered list with the ID as well. So in this way we can execute, and finally we can see the output of our data. So let me just take an example here. So I'll jump to Notepad and I'll show you a script on the WebSQL that I've already created. So this is how the script or the whole syntax of the queries that are performed in WebSQL will look like. Now, as I've discussed earlier, this is somewhat kind of based on HTML, so I'm not going into detail about this. If you want to learn more about SQL, we have a dedicated playlist on our channel where we have discussed about HTML and JavaScript concepts in detail. So make sure you check that out. So to keep it simple, the first part, this is basically the header part, and we have the body, and inside the body we basically write our SQL query here. Now first of all, I've created a variable. I've called a variable db obj, which is the database object, in which I'm calling the open database method. So every time this open database method is called, a reference of this database will be sent to this database object, which is db obj. And if I want to perform any further operations on this database, I'll use the same object only instead of creating a new one every time. So I've created a database here as my database with version as 1.0, and I've kept the text description as my first web SQL example. You can write description of your own choice. Database size, I'm giving it as 2 MB, which should be in the format as 2 into 1024 into 1024. And I'm writing the query for opening the database, that is the db obj, which is our database object, open database method, and inside that I'm calling all these variables inside the body. Now I'm using the execute SQL command here inside the function tx, and this method performs a very important role in web SQL database. This method is basically used to execute read and write statements, and it provides a callback method to process the result of any query. So I've created a table here, employee table, and I've created column as ID, name, and their location. Now I'm using a function insert, which will insert all the values into our table columns, that is ID, name, and location. And finally, I'm using the callback method here to read the data that we have created in our tables using the select operator, that is select star from employee table, and I'm using the callback function here as well. So that is it. Now this is all not related. This is pure basically on HTML, which is basically I've created form which will take the input from the user, and I've created different tabs for ID, name, location, and I've also created an insert button so that the user will insert the data into the values. And again, this is completely based on HTML, guys, so you might need a reference of HTML first to understand this. So I would recommend you to first check the HTML videos on tags, attributes, and all, so that it will be clear. So let me just execute this statement now, and let us see the output. So we have to save the file in the HTML format. So let me just open the file. So as you can see, our file has been created, and let us open this. So as you can see, it will display ID, name, location, and it will ask me to insert values into it. So let me just insert values. I've already taken one value, so let me just take another here. I'm taking ID as 2, name as, let's say, Rahul, location Mumbai. So click on the insert button. It will insert the values into our table. Now similarly, you can add a number of values as per your choice. Let us take another example here. ID as 3, name Kiran, and location as Chennai. So in this way we can add values into our table. It will keep on adding every time you insert a new value into these 3 columns, that is ID, name, and location. So that was all about web SQL, guys. I hope you understood the concepts that were covered in today's tutorial.
And that brings us to the end of today's session, guys. I hope you all understood all the topics and concepts covered in today's session clearly. Thank you for taking your time out and sticking with us throughout this session. If you found this tutorial informative and helpful, make sure to leave us a like and share it with your friends and colleagues. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to our channel SimpliCode for more such amazing content. And also, stay tuned to the final part of this SQL training program series, wherein we'll be covering some more advanced SQL topics. And if you guys feel that if we missed on anything else that is important, or if you have any further queries regarding any of the topics covered in today's session, let us know in the comment section below, and our team of experts will be more than happy to help resolve all your queries at the earliest. Also, check out the similar training program series on our channel on different technologies like JavaScript, Python, and Java. I'll see you guys in the next video, and until next time, stay safe and keep coding.